Welcome to Short Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we are here for part 2 of a 4-part series as we sci-fi our way through
The Gods Themselves. Isaac Asimov.
Ike.
Ike. This is
Ike Azzy.
ambitious.
It is ambitious.
It's very ambitious.
It's extreme. This might be one of the most ambitious books I've ever read.
I will wholeheartedly say that, at least Isaac Asimov was confident in himself. Because if you do this wrong, it's garbage.
Well, who knows? I don't know. I've never looked into when... he wrote 500 books.
Yes.
I don't know where in his publishing history this comes.
I'm not sure, actually. I'm not too familiar with him.
Yeah. So we're going to get into things, but first, we've got a wrap-up of the things which have already happened.
So, what happened? Remember all those salty scientists from part 1? Yeah, they're gone now. Not talking about them. Hallam, Lamont, Bronowski, the other guy, all gone. Because we're in another world. The parallel universe, to be exact. You see, there are no people. Well, people used in a loose term because the parallel universe is inhabited by intelligent creatures. They talk, walk, act, and sound human, but Asimov is too good for that. So yeah, they're different. And there's soft ones and hard ones. Soft ones are never really described, at least not described well, but they're kind of gassy, floating, see-through thingies. Or not, they may be underwater, but let's go with the gassy thing. We do know they feed via photosynthesis, so boom, we immediately know it would be bad news if the pump blew up their sun too. Side note, contrary to popular belief, blowing up the sun is indeed a bad thing. Things get too hot, bad things happen. People, and I'm assuming most soft ones, don't like having their face melted by the sun. But anyway, there are also hard ones. They kind of dominate the soft ones and act as a mentor of sorts, as the soft ones create a triad, which is their journey into adulthood and how they reproduce. It's not typical reproduction on Earth, when a man loves a woman. No, the triad consists of 3 members, which are all necessary to produce offspring. Kind of like your parents in the 70s. Gross. So this particular triad we're reading about is special. They're all just a little different because they think and act sometimes outside of their assigned role, especially Dua, who is a very, very strange emotional. So we have Dua, our emotional, she's the middle, Odin, our rational, the left, and finally Trit, our parental, right. Now, when the time is right and the mood is set, these 3 melt together, which is their form of sexual intercourse, and only when an emotional is involved can orgasm be reached. But what happens during a gassy, see-through, space thingy orgasm, you ask? Great questions, because we don't know. They black out for days and just bask in their sexy time. Now, Dua wants to know what exactly these hard ones are and where they came from. You might say, wink wink, she's thinking awfully rationally for an emotional. Odin has heard of this super great hard one called Estwald, who is apparently the end-all be-all in the realm of hard ones. Super intelligent, this Estwald character apparently has made something called a pump that is producing a massive amount of energy. At this point, we should consult our trusty dictionary for pattern. Noun. A reliable sample of traits, acts, tendencies, or other observable characteristics of a person, group, or institution. So, Trit steals an energy battery and feeds it to Dua, because, nom 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 nom, soft ones like energy. This leads to some sweet lovemaking resulting in conception, but she feels betrayed. So she needs more answers. Dua learns too much from Odin and now realizes it's her duty to stop this pump before the sun explodes. So all those messages the salty scientists got last week, yeah, they're Dua. The solution is to melt into a rock, which is a big no-no in soft one society as it is essentially masturbation, but she does so anyway and learns the big secret. Soft ones don't just pass on. The triad melts together and forms a single hard-on. Hard one. 1. Plot twist. Odin, Dua, and Trit melt together and become Estwald when they're blacked out. Together, they collectively built the pump and doomed civilization.
Thank you, Dalton. Thank you, Salty.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
Salty Dalty.
You're welcome. So where do you want to start with this?
This is unequivocally the best love story I've ever read.
Okay.
This is, without doubt, the most involved and the most rooting I've ever done in a love story.
Okay.
Where would you like to start? Because I'm just gushing.
I'm not gushing. I'm not gushing over it. I'm impressed with it. I will give it I am very impressed, and it's a lot better than last week. Ambitious. It was very ambitious. We'll start with that. This was, instead of giving you a world, this completely redefined species. It gave you an entire new race to deal with. If we go with normal sci-fi, let's take just Harry Potter, for example, it is still a world with humans in it. We understand that. Even though magical creatures are in it, they still take these humanoid characteristics.
Yes.
This is not that.
No.
This is a species, and we're going to call them people, for lack of a better word, who are gas-based, maybe?
I have my suspicions, and maybe it's only because we mentioned this last time, and I have my suspicions that this is a silica-based life species.
That's fair.
Especially because of the fact that Dua is so able to congeal and discongeal.
Okay.
They mention all of these species firming up over time, with the exception, I believe, of the mid. But it could be that the rationals are firmer because they are more carbon-based
Okay.
than the extremely silica-based Dua.
Okay.
And that would seem to maybe, by our understanding, contribute to the intelligence involved as well because of the energy transfer process that happens through. So one of the big things on the EV, the electric vehicle market right now, is if you can get to a solid state battery,
Okay.
things supercharge. And I think that part of that is to do with if you can get a charge through solids, right? So the energy consumption used by a more solid species or part of a species, such as a carbon-based life form, may be more advanced or more like a oh golly, I'm going to drop the term right now. Capacitor, able to discharge that information, that energy real quick versus a silica-based. Now, this is all very counterintuitive based on the things that we know. Like, for example, Apple, I don't know why I'm going into this, but Apple develops its own silica. And that's part of what makes Apple products so extremely advanced compared to other products on the market is their abilities, and part of those abilities are based on silica.
Okay. So we have some possible silica-based life forms here. And instead of the traditional, a man and a woman create a child together,
Right.
we have what we call a triad in this. In the
Yes.
triad, we have the left, the right, and the mid. And these are the three characters that we're following throughout this, and Asimov even breaks this down with 1A, 1B,
Right.
1C, which is brilliant. It really is, because it all pays out in the end. But we have these three beings. The left, we have Odin, and Odin is, we assume, male. We have the masculine pronoun with this. We have the mid, which is Dua, the emotional, which we get the female pronoun. But we also have the right parental, Trit. We also get the masculine pronoun from this. And the three of these triads come together, and they melt. And that's how, sorry, there was like a bug flying here. That's how we form new life, which is completely unique. This is 100% original and completely created within 100 pages. And by the end of it, you understand it. You may not have an idea what's going on at the beginning, but by the end of this, you know exactly what's going on.
Right.
It's impressive.
More than impressive on a conception-based level is the impressive part of this on an ironic-based level. What was the first part of this story about?
The first start of the story?
Yes.
Blah, 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 blah. My bad.
It was about humans, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's about people.
Okay, so we're talking about last week's.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
It was about people.
Yes.
10 pages into this second part, Dua's story, the mid, is already 100 times as human as anything in that first part.
Okay.
How many emotions do we get in the second part?
Quite a few.
We get fear. We get love. We get jealousy. We get ambition. We get sense of self. We get sense of other. We get sense of what does it mean to act outside of those things expected of you. We get all of these things within this part of the story
Okay.
that we did not get last time.
Okay.
Basically, all we got in that first part was a little bit of fear, a whole lot of jealousy,
Okay.
maybe some ambition.
It was very rigid and it was very scientific. That was
Yeah.
one of my big complaints with the first one here. Now that we are in a completely non-human world, it is more emotional. It is more wrenching than just numbers and science.
And the most possibly the least reactionary of any of these three main characters of the second part is the one called an emotional.
Okay.
She does flip out at the end and try to ruin everything for everyone ever, but for the large part of that story, she's just trying to learn herself and figure out what makes her happy.
Very fair.
She finds out that it's learning.
Very fair.
She ends up being counter to expectation. And what is the thing that we learned during the course of that second part? We learned that not only is the Odin Trit Dua triad an important one, it is quite possibly the most
important
one. Does that have to do with the fact that none of that triad operates completely within the limitations of their society?
And that was the big push they kept mentioning. So we have the soft ones. These are the soft ones, and we also have these hard ones, which are like kind of an overruling species, the ones who are the wise, educated ones in this world. And the three finally meld together, and once you meld together this last time, you pass on and you become a hard one. We discovered that at the end. But these three here, these three who have always been said are a little bit different. They're a little bit special. They're unique. They're different. They meld together and they form Estwald. And Estwald is the one who created the pump. So when they come together, they're the ones who basically, you're right, they're the most important ones of the species. They created this infinite source of energy. But once they come apart, and we have these conflicting different personalities, one of them's trying to destroy the pump. But together, they make it work. It's interesting. It's very Freudian, in my opinion. This is id, ego, superego, 100%.
Okay.
If you break it down, you have your rational id, you have your emotional ego, and you have your parental superego. Melded together, you have one good functioning person. But when broken down, this is 100% Freud. I think that's interesting. That's impressive. And it all works.
How do you figure that the id is the rational?
Did I mistake that? Would you check that off differently?
Well, so I didn't necessarily walk into that interpretation.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time breaking down. So it seems counterintuitive to me because I imagined Odin as the sort of oh damn it! I didn't even write it down. I can't think of anything. This has been a terrible week for me for some reason. But anyway, I didn't walk into that interpretation. When you're talking about id, you're talking about something that is completely reactionary and pleasure-based. Okay. Now, Odin does take pleasure in his learning, but it does not seem to be a sort of visceral need.
Okay.
The way that Trit, to me, seems to play into the visceral sort of lizard brain need to reproduce.
Okay.
But Dua is the one that makes all of the pleasure of the
Reproductive system.
reproductive act pleasurable.
Okay.
Right. So I think all of I don't think Odin has necessarily a claim to the id spot at all, whereas the other two, it could be argued, do.
Okay.
I'm looking for you to justify it, but I would love for you to justify that breakdown. How did you get to those
I feel
choices?
like I should have wrote more down about it. I thought I'm right about this. I'm going with it, so I'm not going to write anything more down about it. But let's talk about something else here. We do get a lot of sexuality in this as well between these three characters. You were just talking about that reproductive act and how Dua is basically the pleasure maker of this act. She's the one who makes the act pleasurable for everybody.
But seems to take little from it.
Takes little from it. I think it also could be argued that when Trit is basically feeding Dua this food sphere that they have, this basically ball of energy, it basically kind of just puts her out. It's almost rape.
Yeah, okay, I can see that claim.
Because Dua had wanted nothing to do with this. They were at the point where they were going to create their third part of a new triad, which would be their parental part.
Right.
And she wanted nothing to do with that. It
No,
wasn't time.
she wanted. I don't think that's necessarily fair. She did want the melting still. She still took joy from that.
Correct.
I think that so this was a type of coercion, and the undermining was done by Trit to himself.
Okay.
Because he accepted the impregnation, where it was supposed to be that impregnation was supposed to be a decision by the triad.
But I think because he fed Dua that sphere of energy, and which basically prompted the melting, it forced this melting,
It did not.
and it created this great melting. This is
Yeah.
the greatest act ever.
But I don't think that Dua was necessarily opposed to the melting itself.
I don't know. Some gray area in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it's gray area.
But again, we do get some humanized sexualization throughout this as well. We get the idea of Dua melting into these rocks, this stone rubbing they're talking about, which is a direct representation of masturbation.
Yeah.
100%. So it is very interesting that characters that are not human in the least, they're not even like carbon-based life forms, they're kind of this gaseous, expanding mass of energy, are 100% humanized in this.
Right, and not only that, but who is the one that is drawn into masturbation time and again?
Is it Dua?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is masturbation?
Self-pleasure.
Yeah. Which is an id type.
Shut up. Forgive me for taking the Freud route.
So I saw Odin as a stoic,
Okay.
which is to say that he is foregoing everything that is not profitable in his life in some way or another.
Okay.
Which would, to me, suggest that he is the opposite of the id. Because even the learning that he enjoys partaking in does not have an immediate return. So the superego is something that foregoes the immediate return, right? So sexual pleasure is an immediate return. Dua is the one who gives into that. The reproductive drive is a lizard brain mechanism, which is where the id stems from which the id stems. So those were the reasons that I sort of saw Odin as, if anything, the superego versus Trit. But I see what you're saying with Trit, because Trit is assuming the role placed on Trit by the society, which is the high-minded.
Yeah,
right?
parental role. This is what you're supposed to do. It's the moral ground you're supposed to take.
But it is not necessarily, to me, that suggests the ego, not the superego. Because the ego is saying other people are going to look upon me and judge me for not having my third.
Okay. Regardless, we have three personalities coming together to create one being.
So what I was doing is I was struggling with Dua being a romantic,
Okay.
Odin being a stoic, but what does that make Trit?
And it's strange. It's strange. And again, this is very ambitious of Asimov to just tackle this and create this world out of nothing.
And it is a credit to Asimov that he did not say, okay, well, I got three people in this relationship. I'm going to break them down as id, superego, and ego. which one is which, right?
Fair,
So any of them, like we seem to be able to have plays on any of them with that claim.
And it's difficult really to talk about these characters and attempt to humanize them when they are 100% the complete opposite of humans. Their parallel universe is the opposite of ours.
But that is the trick of literature.
It is,
Right.
it is. But it is something that's difficult to talk about. The first 20, 30 pages of this, no clue what was going on.
Yeah,
You just get dumped in this world with no explanation and no warning.
and so I was ready for the second part to be the story of the Periwinkle. Periwinkle. I'll take the Periwinkle. I was ready for this huge jump to. It seemed like the next logical place to go. I was not ready for it to be in the fashion that we got it.
No, I agree with you. Like, this is where you're assuming you're going to be going. But the world Asimov built, my God, that's impressive. That's an entire novel. It's an entire series worth of world building in a few pages that he's managed to accomplish.
Yeah, but it does throw you off.
It does.
Right? So
It's a little jarring.
It is jarring, and it is difficult from the reader's perspective as far as finding your footing, especially. So I don't want to say anthropomorphized, but we've got all of these people things going on, right?
Yes.
This in the beginning we have this yearning to be alone. We've got this going off to explore oneself. We've got self-doubt going on, and then but we've also got all of these terms about melting and coming together. Let me see if I can find anything just on this page real quick.
Again, not quote worthy. You aren't going to mine some great quotes out of this.
But it's one of my points. This is super competently written.
It is. It's well done. It really is.
She had loved the surface at evening. When you get there, without knowing what's going on, she had loved the surface at evening. As far as we know, on our world, there's no real intelligent life in the great deep, right? Dolphins are supposed to be really smart. Whales are supposed to be really smart. They don't have language. They don't have, as far as we know, this conceptualization of loving the surface at evening. So when we think loving the surface at evening, we're imagining things that are still land dwellers.
Okay.
So it is difficult for us, or it was difficult for me, I can't speak for everyone. It was difficult for me to go ahead and finally concede that we are talking about someone that lives in the water, right? Talking about someone that is at least part-time, right? We've got so many things going on. I still don't know what these people look like.
No, I have not a clue. Like I said, I assume there's some kind of like gaseous energy because they can expand, they can contract, they can melt into stone. There's no explanation, but it works.
Right.
And that's concerning to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so how did you picture these things going on?
I honestly, like, I just see like little like glowing energy things.
That's how you pictured
Like,
it?
I honestly, the stereotypical like cartoony bacteria,
Yeah.
where you see just kind of the wiggly shape. That's what I got with these people.
So Odin for me was a character from Mortal Kombat. Trit for me was, there's some cartoon where there's a box of fries that talks, and there's a brain that sounds like this.
Aqua Teen
Hunger Force. For me, Trit's the brain from that.
Okay.
Dua was a jellyfish.
I think jellyfish is more appropriate for these people.
Yeah. So but they're all different, right? They've all got different shapes.
They're different.
But I don't know where I got those ideas from.
Yeah, there's a reason this has never been made into a film.
Oh yeah.
It's not happening.
No, there's no way.
But anyway, back on track a little bit here. We're talking about human sexuality being used for a different species, for lack of better words.
Right. This is a poly relationship.
It is a poly relationship. And I find it interesting. We find out at the end that basically the coming of age, the maturing of these three, the triad, is basically the creation of a new hard one. That is a mature version of a soft one. And it's interesting that the one thing that's kind of the taboo in the society is the melting into the stone, the masturbation, if you will, because that is denoting a maturity. We are growing, we are advancing, and we're trying to keep that away from them, because the minute that they've reached that level of maturity, the triad is over. We become a hard one. So it's kind of interesting how there's this like path of maturity that you're getting here that's very similar to human existence, but entirely different, but still works.
Well, and did you catch the ultimate human thing going on there
What was the ultimate human thing?
with the shame? There were even urban legends about
Oh, somebody who completely went into the stone?
and someone who got stuck in the stone and all
Yes,
this.
yes.
Masturbation
They
will make
went
you blind. Had hairy palms. All these things, right? So it was just brilliant the way Asimov has done this.
It's good. It is brilliant, for lack of a better word. It honestly is. But my God, man,
He makes you work for it.
he makes you work for it. That's a good way of putting it. I am too lazy to enjoy this book.
I cannot express how much this book has rekindled my love for hard sci-fi. So as a reader, hard sci-fi was my first love.
Okay.
I remember being either 5th grade or 6th grade, somewhere in there, and trying to read It by Stephen King, and I just couldn't get into it. For me, it seemed too disjointed, but I remember picking up, what was my first one? It was a Michael Crichton novel. I can't remember which one it was right now, but I remember falling in love with it immediately.
Okay.
And I read Eaters of the Dead, I read Jurassic Park, I read the one about the space sickness that came down. I don't remember what it was called right now. I read so many Michael Crichtons and loved them. And then somewhere along the line, I fell out of love with hard sci-fi, and I don't know where it was.
Well, in the literary world, sci-fi really gets a bad rap. Sci-fi is kind of shunned off as a pop fiction genre. Nobody really cares about it. But, like, there's some quality stuff going on with this. There's some impressive writing going on with this. And, obviously right here we have a Hugo and Nebula award-winning classic, but who cares about the Hugos and the Nebulas? It's impressive. I don't think this book got the credit it deserved so far. Because I think the next little bit of reading that we have here is we're going to be meshing these two worlds together.
I wonder about that. Because to me, the logical step from here is to come back to Earth, so that the reader has... I don't see the melding of the worlds. I imagine the third part is strictly Earth.
I think we're going to be back and forth.
Well, let me finish. No, sorry. The reason that I see the third part being strictly Earth is that your reader's from Earth,
Okay.
right? So
Makes sense.
that is where for your reader the stakes lie, despite the fact I feel the stakes so much more heavily in that second part.
Fair. And I do think you nailed it last week. You were talking about how, these messages coming across aren't just a warning. There's something more going on here. Absolutely so.
I called that.
The melding of the three into Estwald, the one who created the pump, was just goddamn gorgeous. That was an M. Night Shyamalan level twist.
Yeah, it's still confusing for me, though, because Tritt was speaking about Estwald.
Yes. But they never
Or
saw...
not Trist. Odin.
But they never saw Estwald. They've only heard of him. They never spoke to him. Anytime, are you Estwald? Absolutely not.
Right. And Odin even talked about not having met Estwald himself.
Correct.
He talked about the words that the others had said to Odin about Estwald.
So basically, that first melting created Estwald.
Yeah,
Estwald created the pump.
And I understand that when you are melted, you don't remember anything. They made a big deal about that. So I guess it's like the whole horror trope of you've got dual personalities, and when you're your other guy, you're out there killing people.
Page 168, though, it all comes together when you have part 7 ABC.
Yeah.
It's Estwald.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
I think that very much we would be doing a disservice to ourselves as a channel, to our interests as literarians.
Literari.
Literati?
Carry on.
Literarians. I just coined that and I like it. If we did not talk about this passage that stretches from 91 to 92, it was wonderful to have it explained, Dua thought. What she was told, she really knew, but she didn't know the proper words, the long science words that Odin knew. And it made sharper and more meaningful everything that happened. This is the secret superpower of being a language-wielding species.
Okay.
This is why, so there is a video on YouTube that you can find of, I can't think of anything today, god damn it. The weird comic writer who wrote The Watchmen. You know the guy.
No, not Neil Gaiman.
Not Neil Gaiman. Alan Moore.
There you go.
There is a video you can find on YouTube of Alan Moore explaining magic and how magic, casting a spell really is spelling a word.
Fair.
Because back all that way,
Yes.
when magic came about, if you could spell and you could read and you could write, not everybody could do that, baby. So being able to do it was so much more advanced and an extreme form of communication.
Language, history, and linguistics.
Being a language-wielding species is a superpower. Imagine if you got a bunch of kindergartners together and asked them to, and they've done studies on this, asked them to explain something they know, like playing Monopoly. And you ask them to explain the game of Monopoly to kids who don't know it. And it doesn't always go real well.
Fair enough.
But some kid knows one of the rules, and another kid knows another one of the rules, and one of the other kids says, no, if you pass this little square here, you get $200. And together they don't really play the game, but they can play a form of the game.
Okay.
When you have advanced language, playing the games gets easier. Playing more games becomes possible. Playing extreme games becomes extremely easy just because of the communication involved.
Okay.
Imagine, what would we be able to do this show if we spoke in beeps?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, somehow you manage, and I sit over here, but that's okay.
And you're the one that looks like a clown.
Beep, beep, beep.
There's only so many beeps you can use.
Okay.
Right? Imagine if we had to do this show using Morse code.
Fair.
How much more difficult would it be? So when we have extreme uses of language, throwing around ideas like we've thrown around, id, superego, and id, stoicism versus romanticism, throwing around these ideas becomes extremely easy. And someone such as Asimov is working with so many ideas and is able to put them down like this, that I think really, when you're talking about how sci-fi goes unappreciated, I think part of it is, look, we've both got the same bachelor's degree. How many of those people whose classes that we sat in would have the RPM to read something like this?
Fair.
Because it uses a lot of imagination, not just the words on page, baby.
It does.
So, a lot of the enjoyment, a lot of the appreciation that sci-fi skips out on is because the fact that a lot of these highfalutin literature appreciators aren't playing with sci-fi. Is there one non-literary thing in here? Have we found how many ironies have we found within this text? This is checking all the boxes.
It's a rich text.
This is checking all the boxes that quote-unquote literature has to check. Now, when you cannot nuance those things, something like this and something like the slop off the bottom shelf of the sci-fi aisle, I'm mixing Barnes & Noble terms and liquor store terms, but that slop off the bottom shelf in the 10 high equivalent in sci-fi versus Asimov, which is the I don't know what's on the top shelf.
I don't shop there.
Whatever's up there.
It's the top shelf liquor of the sci-fi
This is the top shelf of the sci-fi section versus the bottom shelf. When you are a literature appreciator who doesn't take the time with sci-fi, you can't tell the two apart. They both look the same thing.
Okay.
Screw it, give them their own awards. Don't let them have ours.
Okay. Genres are convenient. That's fair, especially if you're selling books. If you want something science fiction based, it's nice to go to the science fiction section. But we did very recently Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I still contend is great, and a lot of people love it, but polar opposites from science fiction points of view. We have the same ideas going on with space exploration, things like that. It's a space type novel. It's a different world. But these are polar opposite books, but they can still function in the same genre. Not saying one's better than the other, but I do understand where you're coming from. There is some slop and some trash sci-fi. I love me some trashy fantasy novels. Absolutely so. You give me a lazy fantasy novel, that is my Sunday read. that's fine.
We've done a few of those on the show. We're going to have to get into some Michael
We have
Crichton.
never done a lazy fantasy. Like, I will bring you some R.A. Salvatore and we will
We
go
did
to town.
7 of them in a row. 3 chapters at a time.
No. Anyway, what more do you want to say about this?
We've got this from 110 and 111. Trit had never felt less patient. He did not pretend to understand why Dua acted the way she did. He did not want to try. He did not care. He never knew why emotionals did what they did, and Dua didn't even act like other emotionals. She never thought about the important thing. She would look at the sun, but she would thin out so that the light and food would just pass through her. Then she would say that it was beautiful. That was not the important thing. The important thing was to eat. What was the important thing about eating? What was the beautiful thing about eating? What was beautiful? She always wanted to melt differently. Once she said, "Let's talk first." We never talk about it. We never think about it. Odin would say, "Let her have her way about it, Trit. It makes it better." Odin was always patient. He always thought things would be better when they waited, or else he would want to think it out. Trit wasn't sure he knew what Odin meant by think it out. It seemed to him it just meant that Odin did nothing. This is such a beautiful encapsulation. What's that, 100 words? 150 maybe. This is such a beautiful encapsulation of the character of Trit.
Okay.
Tell me that is not all you need to know about Trit. It's driven towards reproduction.
It's fair.
It's questioning the other members of the triad without making any attempt to understand. And it is, so Trit's played as the dumb one. And at the end, Trit even comes to the conclusion that think it out just means you do nothing. That's all think it out means. This is Trit beautifully encapsulated.
Okay.
It's also Asimov being goddamn hilarious. This is wonderfully funny. This is so. Sitcoms are situational comedies. The ones that make people laugh. King of Queens. Is King of Queens still on?
No.
I haven't had a television since like 2006. So
I'm glad you dated yourself with that, because I'm like, who the hell watches King of Queens? Like, that's not even on Netflix anymore.
Look, I don't know, okay? I'm just giving examples.
We
Everyone knows
understand
it.
where you're going with this.
Everyone knows it, right? King of Queens makes a lot of people laugh. Everyone loves Raymond. Makes a lot of people laugh. They're not elite level sitcoms.
Okay.
Because the characters themselves are loosely defined and put into positions. Elite level sitcoms, Drew Carey, Friends, these have well-defined role players that act within their characterization on screen. That is what separates It's Funny from It's Elite. Why are you shaking your head?
I'm just, go on.
Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Okay, so play with the argument, not the examples, Dalton.
I'm so stuck on the examples. It's like a time machine.
I couldn't care less about you as a human being.
Carry on.
But we've got these characters acting within their defined roles, being funny.
Okay.
This is elite level sitcom material if you're willing to be dry for it.
Okay. If I may, it's also interesting.
You may.
With Estwald, the creation of Estwald, because Estwald is obviously a major player in this because he's the one who created the pump, this great divine being with all this gathered intelligence, the one who is saving our society. The characters are acting slightly outside of their defined roles. That is the curiosity of science. It is the characters looking at themselves and the world and saying, what can we do different? Why are we doing it like this? It is that curiosity that drives them when they come together to form Estwald and give them the capability to create this bump, because that's what science is. It's curiosity.
It's not just the curiosity. It's the curious nature of these characters.
Okay.
Einstein. Weird guy. Married his cousin. In his third marriage, I think. second marriage, third marriage. Played the violin whenever he couldn't figure something out. His desk, have you ever seen the pictures of his desk, the way he left it after he died? Absolute mess.
Yeah.
I mean, just miserable looking. Like, how did anyone think there? Worked at a patent office until his miracle year. You know what the miracle year is?
No.
He published 4 or 5 papers that just completely redefined science. Like in the same year,
Had a good week.
1905, he had his Annus Mirabilis, where he published a paper on Brownian motion. He published a paper on the size of atoms, or maybe that was the Brownian motion one, I can't remember. He published the relativity paper, published the E equals MC squared paper, all in the same year. Wasn't even a scientist. Wasn't even employed as a scientist. Was a patent office clerk. Because he didn't care. He wasn't gonna, he applied to the schools, but he was sort of a weird guy and no one wanted him around. So he would do thought experiments at his desk all day. And he had a couple friends that were also scientists, and one of the things they would do, one of his buddies hated the smell of cigars, so every day when he would go to work, they would sneak in his room and smoke cigars on his bed.
Brilliant.
And he was just a weirdo,
Okay.
completely outside the confines of scientist. That's what made him great. Caravaggio, brilliant painter, never really had a studio set up for too long. You know why?
It's on the run, wasn't he?
In trouble with the law.
Yeah.
Killed a guy over a tennis match. The Pope, the religious leaders of the day kept saying, God, this Caravaggio guy does great stuff. Let's give him a commission. Let's commission him to paint the Assumption of Mary. I think it was the Assumption of Mary. Either way, it was a painting of Mary. The Assumption of Mary is basically a painting saying Mary never died. So how did he pick his model for that painting, do you think? One of the popular hookers of the day drowned and washed up on the beach, and he said, that's the one.
Well,
There she is. Got in trouble for that, too.
it's a nice painting.
Yeah.
It's a great painting.
So these people who break the rules and these people who don't confine themselves within the boxes defining what they are the people who end up making differences. Elon Musk keeps getting in trouble with the SEC for his Twitter account. The brilliant mind of our day gets a hair and decides to send out a tweet. And the people who run business in the United States say, "Whoa, wait, what are you doing?
That?
What the hell are you doing here?" So that is sort of the rule breakers, the rebels. That's what's going on here.
Okay, that's fair.
It is super interesting to me to see the sci-fi writer writing about that.
And like, again, I can't say that Asimov is like flexing his chops. I don't really have anything to base that
Right.
off of. But it's impressive. So where do you think this is going? How do you think?
Well, I've got one more thing
One
I'd
more.
like to talk about. The writing itself.
Okay.
How is it?
First part, didn't like it. Very statistic based, very sciencey.
Okay.
Not impressed.
Okay.
This is much better.
Were you ever lost in the first part? Besides the science terms themselves.
Lost because I didn't understand what was going on? No, I think he describes it well. Lost because I was not invested? Absolutely. I was lazy with it.
Okay, but did you always know where we were?
Yeah.
Did you always know where we were going?
For the most part, yeah.
Did you know all the people involved?
Absolutely.
I'll be damned.
I know. And the second part, I think, is much better. It is much better written. It is easier to follow. And that makes no sense to me because I am in a completely different world now where nothing makes sense, but it flows very gracefully. It's impressive.
So speaking about it on a writing level, it's less impressive than Vonnegut. Vonnegut always has a couple little turns that make you go, yeah, man, you stick it to him. Right?
Okay.
So it goes. There's a spider.
That's the spider I was swatting at earlier. It's interesting. Like I said, I think the best way to put it, it's not a very quotable text. Right. There's not a lot of lines in here that I'm like, well, that's just drop dead gorgeous. But it never loses pace. I know where I am.
Did you ever fall out of the text?
No, I did not. And like I said, he created an entire world that is absolutely unlike anything that I've ever read in 100 pages.
So there's very little style, but a whole lot of panache.
Fair?
That is impressive to me. That is an impressive dichotomy. A lot of times writers find their panache through their style. Chuck Palahniuk.
Okay.
Man, there's something visceral about that writing, and you just want to get it, right? That is his panache and his style.
Okay.
The style here is plain. The panache is all the stuff you got to know, all the stuff you got to work through, all the stuff you have to take a step back from the literature and understand and see and recognize, diagnose.
Okay.
It's impressive to me.
I'm glad you're impressed by it. This is going to be a Dickinson for me.
Emily Dickinson?
This is going to be an Emily Dickinson for me. I'm not going to enjoy this book.
Okay.
I know that. I'm going to appreciate it, and I can say, well, damn, I know that's good,
See,
but I'm not going to like it.
I think I'm too Odine and you're too Trit.
It's possible.
I
just want to settle down.
If I
Nice
appreciate
little house, have a couple kids.
baby. I am much more apt to appreciate something or to like something if I can appreciate it. You're much more apt to appreciate something if you can like it.
I identified more with The Rock, but that's okay.
The Rock in the story,
Yeah, just the rocks in
Not-
general. Just there.
not Dwayne Johnson.
No, yeah, well. Anyway, where do you think this is going? How are we going to fix this problem? What's this next part? Because I think that's a valid question at this point.
Oh, it's the only question there is at this point. I think that the third part is going to be based on Earth, and it is going to be the recognition and diagnosis of the fact that the pump itself is breaking down the universe and no one is going to want to stop it anyway because of all the free energy, and the fact that, hey, we're not going to have to deal with this. It's basically the fossil fuel industry saying, hey, I'm going to keep making ice cars.
That's my hope. That whether it's on Earth or not, whether it's back and forth, it doesn't matter. If we get to the point of just basically saying, well, it makes money and it works and nobody does anything, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
If Asimov blows up 2 universes because he can, I'll like it.
I mean, it's it's of mice and men on a big scale.
That's fair.
You got to take him out and shoot him, right?
If we take him out and shoot him and we never get to those rabbits, I like it.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you have anything else to say?
That is all I have for this episode.
Lengthy discussion this week.
Yeah. I am hoping the title doesn't suck as much as it does right now.
The title?
The title, the gods themselves.
Okay.
I never even remember what this book is called.
That's fair.
I'm in love with
I casually look at it every time that we're introducing it. So yeah, that's fair.
I can never remember what this is called. And that is another weakness, perhaps, of the sci-fi genre.
Fair, very fair. Usually it's something that makes no sense, or it's very
Prey.
indicative of the story. Unless you read it, you don't know about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will be back next week with the final part of Isaac Asimov's The Gods Themselves.
With the final part of the read-along.
The final part of the read-along. This is part 3, Contend in Vain, the conclusion of the novel. And if you'd like to join us on this little reading here, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Give this video a like as well, mainly out of sympathy that I'm continuing to read it. And if you want to help us create more great content like this here on Stripcover Lit, there's a link to our new and updated Patreon to be found in the description below.
Carry on, Trit. Carry on.